everyone, and welcome to our session. This is a very special session for our PAW virtual convention on today. It is Let the Generations Speak. We are here today with various individuals in ministry and leadership from different generations. And we are going to speak today on our theme and just share information about where we are as a church and where we are going. I'm so happy to have so many great people here. Um, I'm honored to have the Honorable Bishop Charles Haywood Ellis III, our former he was our former assistant presider and former presider. And there are a whole lot of other things. Assistant treasurer. He has served this organization faithfully. He's the former IPYPU president. Bishop Charles Ellis is just someone that I am so excited to have a part of this because he has spent his life in ministry, in leadership, and in this organization. And I know he has a lot to share with us. We are also honored to have from the PCAFI, do I have that right? Associate Pastor Aaron Porter. He is one of the associate pastors at large with CAM, Kingdom Apostolic Ministries, under my dear friend, amen, the Honorable Bishop Lambert Gates. He is also a former international youth president with the PCAFI. I thank God today. We've got women that I'm excited about who are serving as pastors. Young women who are in position of pastor. One in particular that I am just excited about, and I couldn't even have imagined this when 20 years ago happening for a young woman of her caliber, of her father's caliber, Pastor Vickki Taylor Samuels. She is the daughter of the late Marshall, as we would say, evangelist Marshall Taylor Sr. We know all over the country. Who would have known, really all over the world, who would have known or thought that his daughter would be his successor? In this 21st century, we've got a lot of new things happening. We have a young female pastor. She is our millennial representation, Pastor Teandria. Did I get that right? Do I have it right? Teandria. Come on, tell it to me the right way.
Teandria.
Okay.
We're good with T.
She is one of our young pastors. I'm telling you, the young women are doing it, you all, and I'm so thankful. And then I have here associate pastor, I call him nephew pastor, Tim Slaughter. I've known him most of his life. Remember him as a young boy, and now he is serving with Pastor Smokey Norfolk, but he is serving there, and he is also a member of the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World, and working there with the music department and with the praise and worship leaders and leading us in our praise and worship. And I'm telling you, it is exciting to have all of you today. So wherever you are, y'all in that chat, come on, give them a hand in the chat, if you will. Give them a hand in the chat. Today, I want to share with you, because what we are doing, the purpose of this session is to convene key multi-generational voices in order to discuss the future of the church, the future of the ministry, and how to maintain multi-generational relevancy as we all position ourselves for the promise of God. Bishop Ellis, I want to start with you. Bishop, can you just tell us, how did you and Greater Grace Temple evolve during this pandemic?
The pandemic has caused all of us to stretch ourselves. It's caused all of us to become more creative. I said to the congregation when we closed the sanctuary, had our final service March 22nd of 2020. I said to them, I said that I just believe God is watching us during this time of pandemic. Don't know how long it's going to be, but I said, I want to be found doing something for the Lord, but not being reckless and not being careless. So we've tried to find the comfort level in trying to do what you can do for God, but not putting people at risk at the same time. And somebody said there's a fine line between faith and foolishness. And I tried to make sure that we knew where that line was. So I said to them, we're getting ready to close the sanctuary. We're not going to be having in-person worship services, but I don't believe that I'm going to hunker down in a bunker or go down in the basement of my house and wait on the world to end. I said, because I believe that this could be the church's finest hour. And this is the time when the church could shine the brightest. And we closed, and the Lord opened the door on the Fox affiliate here. They came to me out of all the churches in Southeast Michigan. They came to me and asked me to put together a half-hour presentation, 11 a.m. on the Fox channel, major channel there in the metropolis of Detroit. And they gave me 11 a.m. every Sunday morning. They said, you're going to be on until the churches open back up. And you can do whatever you want during that half hour. And I tried to change my ministry for that time because I was going to be ministering to a whole new audience. Many would be a non-church audience. I was coming on right after the national news. And I'm telling you, God opened that door in the midst of a closed door. So I became well aware that, listen here, I'm not going to fight what's going on because God sometimes is shifting you into different directions. And of course, we in the first Sunday in June, we decided to have our communion service at the campus outdoors, and it went so well. I said, let's take next Sunday off, and Father's Day we're coming back, and we've been outside ever since. I've been outside right through the winter on a 3-foot stage, ministering out there with the people because I want them to know, hey, that pastor is a trooper. You know, I'm going to be where you all are and out there with you. And we've just had a great time, and I believe the Greater Grace has expanded and has increased in ministry during this pandemic time. But it caused us to stretch ourselves and become more creative.
That is awesome. And many times I watched you all. I was, I think, for maybe 7 or 8 weeks, every Saturday, I was on with Lady Chrisette. She was doing women on Saturday evenings because you guys weren't in the building on Sundays and having various guest speakers. And I just saw the creativity that you had. I want to ask Pastor Vickki Taylor Samuels, my dear friend and sister, can you tell us, how did your church evolve during the pandemic? How did you evolve?
I appreciate the question, and I definitely would ditto a lot of what Bishop said, with the exception of Channel 2. They didn't call me, they called him. But we did have to stretch ourselves, and I'm happy to say that the Lord blessed us with Bishop's leadership through the South Carolina Council. I was very blessed when he took the forefront and said, hey, listen, you need to close your churches. Bishop Brooks did the same thing. I was already feeling led to do that. So having, our leaders come forth with that confirmation for me was wonderful. So we stayed out until actually this about a month ago. And during that time, we stretched ourselves, and me becoming more vocal in ministry on Facebook. I was vocal, but I normally did postings. But this time I actually stretched a little bit further and did actual services, pumped it up there with the Zoom services and Bible classes. And we were blessed because we had more people to join our church online than we had in the building. We had 77 people to join our church online, and they're steady calling in and asking for prayer and asking how to be saved and to be healed. And so I thank God that we never lost any members. No, we didn't gain members to the building, but we gained members to the social media, which is where I believe the church is right now. And so with Bishop having saying that, you just kind of formulated yourself, you didn't go into a bunker, but you just followed where God was making things go. And what that meant that you had to, adjust yourself to the times. You had to spend a little extra money. I knew that COVID was going on, but I did a couple of times go out and among the community and I addressed some people. I gave away a lot of things through our SALT ministry, through the church. And would you know that families came to the platform because of me going out giving $50 grocery cards to people, letting them know, even in the midst of COVID, I am masked up and I'm staying 6 feet from you, but I'm gonna put this piece of card on the ground. You pick it up and go on and get you some groceries, and then meet us on Sunday at 11:30 or 12:15. So that's how we evolved.
That is awesome, said. I'm just going to leave it on the ground. You pick it up
Yes.
and come on and meet us.
Yes.
I'm interested to know, Pastor Ellis, you tell us how did the millennial church evolve? Tell us about that. And what is the actual name of your church in the city and state that you're in?
Thank you so much first for just inviting me to be a part of this. For the Hill Community Church, we're here in Birmingham, Alabama, and I just, I say we're a unique baby because we started about 5 weeks before the pandemic hit, and it was just a really difficult moment for us. And I mean, we went through a year of training prior to actually launching the ministry. And not one time during the training did it ever come up in conversation like, well, in the case of a pandemic, this is how we're going to move. And so it really hit us, and we were not prepared for it. And so the adjustments were, necessary. We had to reimagine church. And, for us, evolution was just, turning into a solely virtual ministry and not having all of the equipment like some of the other major churches. It didn't stop us. We shifted, and although it was a tedious time, it's sort of thematic from Bishop Ellis and Pastor Samuel saying the same thing, that they were stretched. It was the same thing for us, and we appreciate, at this point we can say that we appreciate that our capacity was tested and stretched, and through that, even though we didn't get a good start, we're actually still here today. So that's just a proud moment for us, but that is what we had to do in order to evolve during the pandemic.
Yes, that's good.
Wow. 5 weeks. Come on. 5 weeks before the pandemic. And like you said, with all of the planning that you did, there was nothing in the book and in your plans that said, now this is what we're going to do if a pandemic hits. We didn't even talk much about I probably had used the word pandemic maybe 10 times before we were hit in 2020. I think the first time that I really heard the use of the word pandemic was when there was the AIDS epidemic that hit in Africa. And when it was hitting in Africa, and around that time is back in 2003, I took a trip with a lot of women within the AME church. And that's when I really saw what they meant when they talked about a pandemic. Just from children to men and women being hit with that. And up until then, I really didn't hear the word. And now I don't think we'll ever forget a pandemic and what a pandemic is. Associate Pastor Aaron Porter, you, like myself, are full-time in ministry in addition to serving as associate pastor at large. A matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, the associate pastor at large position has come during the pandemic.
Correct.
How did you evolve as a full-time evangelist with a family during the pandemic?
Once again, thank you, Pastor Riley, for having us on, and we salute our guests today. It was a challenging time for the evangelists in general. at the beginning of March, from January to March, I had at least 3 international trips already set for the year. The calendar was looking well. Every year, if you know the landscape of evangelism, your calendar sort of upgrades naturally. And God had just started to sort of position some things and shift some things, and we were well on our way. And all of a sudden, God allowed the world to shut down. And we were placed in a position where we had to trust the voice of God to, number one, know what he called us to. And I'll never forget what my pastor told me in 2008 when we sat down and had this meeting about me going full-time in the ministry. He said, son, I never want you to ever get to the place where you are ashamed or afraid to go back and do what is necessary for your family. He said, it doesn't mean that God didn't call you. He said, if things are not going the way you wanted to go on the field, go ahead and shift some things, take a period here, take a period there. And so God was just strategic in the life of Aaron Porter Ministries, just to open some unique doors whereby we didn't have to do that, but God just provided financially through other ministries and things like that, and things that I never would have saw happening, but I saw the hand of God in 2008 position and reposition us, and who would have known that this season would have been upon us. But I stand here today to say, that God has kept us. I have never seen the righteous forsaken. I have never seen his seed beg for bread. My wife and I sit and talk. There's so many things. We had just purchased what she would probably call her dream home right before this thing hit, and so other things are going on. And I will state emphatically once again, God is an awesome God that he has consistently provided. And we didn't just thrive, rather survive. I believe that we thrived and we've grown even in this season. And so shout out to my God. He's an awesome provider. And we're still in it, but we're on our way out. And even now, God is opening doors. We're doing a little bit of travel now. And we're just trusting God that God is going to restore and replenish anything that the cankerworm, the caterpillar, and the locust has taken away. God is going to give it all back. How good measure, pressed down and shaken together. I need to go ahead and be quiet and sort of hand it all back to you.
Ooh, I love that, and I know. But I'm telling you, your testimony, you've given my testimony, because I mean, when that thing hit, it was like, what happens now?
Right.
I mean, it was like, okay, so you want us to shut down for how? We're gonna do 1 week? We're gonna do 2 weeks? We don't know when we got. Say right. What? How do I?
So, Pastor, can I say just one more quick thing to that? I want to applaud all of the churches that kept the voice of God. Everybody had this concept of 2020 vision going into 2020. Everybody had a theme, and somewhere in their thing is getting ready to be 2020 vision. We cross over to 2020. In March, the world shuts down. I want to applaud all of the churches that still kept the word that God gave them at the end of 2019 on December 31st, because it was those churches that still say Bishop Gates was leading the charge. He said, if God said revival, we're still doing revival. We're still doing conference. We're not going to, he said, we're going to find another way to do it, and we're still going to do it. So I want to applaud all of those churches that say, you know what, the gifting, the calling of the evangelist is still out there. The calling of the teacher is still out there, and they still strategically use those gifts. It was just in a different platform. So I want to celebrate every church that consistently held on to the vision and the word that God said to still launch forward and to thrive.
That's awesome and very admirable. Thank you so much for saying that, Pastor Porter. Thank you so much. I want to ask you this, Pastor Tim. You work in the area at Victory. You are over worship or creative arts. Tell us exactly what that title is. And I know you all are just recently going back, like just weeks back. Yes. But How did you keep it? How did you all evolve? How did Victory keep it going, especially having a pastor who has a kind of recognition that Pastor Smokey Norfolk does? How did you all keep that going?
Creative worship, my role, responsibility is to oversee the worship experience from the parking lot through um, the whole experience and service, what you see, what you hear, the whole flow of service back to when you return to your car in a parking lot. We want it to be an experience, not just when service start, but even when you get out your car, it should be an experience that's inviting, that's welcoming. So the challenge of that, that's, the mindset of that traditionally is, everything geared towards being in person. So here comes the pandemic, March of 2020. And I believe that this season really forced us, as many of the pastors and bishops have said, it forced us to have a greater focus on the global church, that entity that was in the background. It was a part of our every Sunday routine, but it didn't have the forefront as the people that's right in front of you. So here now, we're forced, if you will, to now focus on the harvest. Because many times the harvest is not what's sitting in the seat, it's what's still out there. It's the ones that will never walk through your doors. And now, for a whole year, that became the focus. How do we reach these people that never would walk through our doors? And now we have an opportunity to be creative through Zoom, through videos, through presentation, through a shift. It really shifted ministry and focused and forced us to focus that church is not the building, it's the people. It's the people. So now, how do we reach them? How do our ministry remain relevant? Singing to empty seats, preaching to empty seats. That was the biggest shift for me, because we respond to the amens, and when you got to have an amen in your pocket in this season because you can't hear it, and it even forced the way ministry flowed to change in terms of getting engagement, telling people to respond to the chat, even restructuring your sermon, restructuring how you sing it in your exhortation, lift your hands at home, not in the sanctuary. It was a completely revamping of how we approach ministry. And I think it was really strategic from God, for the church to break outside of our silos. I believe the church universal was headed to a silos. And if you will, if I can say it, almost mini gangs, who you with, and I'm with this church, and I'm with that church. But now everybody on the same playing field. The doors is closed. And now who are we going to reach? What are we going to do? So I really believe it was strategic, as Bishop Ellis said. This was strategic by God to grow the church up. Will my worship diminish because I'm not in the sanctuary? Will it be less intensive because I'm in my living room? We were forced to grow up.
I love that. And forced to, and those of you that are watching this today, you were forced. You were forced to say, hey, I can praise and worship God wherever I am. Now, the other piece to that is, for those who had problems with technology in ministry, and some of you watching right now, there was a time you wouldn't have believed you would be watching a national convention on your tablet or via YouTube or on your phone or on your computer. You wouldn't have believed it because some of you didn't even know how to operate it, but you learned how to. Now, to my panelists, when we became more technology orientated, that also put us in a position for younger generation to come on board and be a part of our ministries. So where the older ones would come to the church and the younger ones wouldn't, the younger ones are not saying, oh, I can just check y'all out on YouTube. I can get you on Facebook. Let me hit you up on my iPhone before y'all go on. So now we are becoming more multi-generational in our ministries. As we are moving forward and with the help of the Lord moving out of this pandemic, I want to ask you, Pastor Vickki, to maintain multi-generational relevancy, what should be our approach to ministry as we move forward? We want to maintain, like you said, you got some 77 members. I'm sure that some of them, they're from different generations. To keep that multi-generational relevancy, what should our approach be moving forward, even as we're moving back into the building? Come on and talk to us.
A powerful question that seems to be permeating the air among a lot of different platforms. I would have to say the way God has dealt with me concerning this is strictly the Bible, and that is he's the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. I've got to preach Jesus no matter what. I've got to preach Jesus because he is the ultimate power. I remember preaching at a church that is not in our organization, and the bishop, I asked him, I said, what are you doing? Because your church, his church is overflowing. He said, I said, did you change your message? He said, sis, I never changed my message. He said, my message is Jesus saved. And that's it. He said, I preach about sin and I let the sinner know their need for God. I let them see through the word of God the necessity of the gospel. And I think in this day and time is no big, what should I say? No big thing that people don't realize that the gospel is definitely colored. It's very colorful today. And so for me, God has dealt with me. Listen, like Brother Tim said, and I love what you said, Pastor Tim, about people are saying, I'm with this one and I'm with that one. That's the days of Paul and Corinth. They said, I'm of Apollos and I'm of Paul. And the Bible says, well, Apollos, he gave and Paul, he watered, but God giveth the increase. And so Apollos planted. So that's where I am with that. We cannot let the gospel of Jesus Christ slip away, because if we try to give people what their carnal minds want to hear, we will completely miss their spiritual need on the inside by trying to meet them on the external side. No, the gospel saves inside out. And if we want radical change, then we've got to give the radical message. And the radical message is going to cause people not to make you or give you an award all the time. You may not be accepted by everybody, but what does it profit the man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So I must stay with that message. And I'm here to say that when you stay with that message, God has somebody that's going to hear that message. It may not be all 77, it may not be all 70,000 or whatever, but it's going to be who he wants to hear it, because he said, my sheep hear my voice and they come to me.
That's good. I want Associate Pastor Aaron Porter, put on your associate pastor hat. I had you with the evangelist hat on earlier. Put your associate pastor hat on. How can multi-generational relevancy, how should we approach that in ministry moving forward from an associate pastor position? And how are you all already trying to put that in place?
This is a group of ministers that we communicate daily. This conversation literally came up a few hours ago. And how do we approach the comeback? As we see the exodus coming out of the pandemic, how do we do it even as pastors, as evangelists? But one of the things that stuck out, I was blessed to hear the esteemed Bishop Noel Jones with Pastor Omar and Bishop Blake have a conversation on Father's Day. And he said something that was very unique. He said, in this culture, what this culture has created, it has created two distinctive groups of people. One he called gatherers, the other he called connectors. He said the gatherers, which is now this Generation X, we're going to come to the building because the building is what we know. Fellowship, there's a group of people that just need community. They need the ability to embrace, to feel, and to see. He said, but there is a millennial generation that will never come to your steeple, that will never come to your edifice, who has who has grew their congregation, thousands of people, simply by hitting a button on Sunday morning. And when the comfort of the gospel is given to me, and I can literally wake up at 8:59 and be in church by 9 a.m. That is something that we as the church have to acknowledge. Now, the concern from the associate pastor mindset is: are we still discipling people, or are we just giving them what they want? And I think that's the question that the church has to answer. One of the things that we have done at Kingdom Apostolic Ministry under Bishop Gates, shout out to my bishop, to the presider today. But one of the things that Bishop Gates has instituted is a consistent touch to touch, right? There's always someone touching the congregation. I became an associate pastor. One of the first things I got was a list of names. You're responsible for these 80, like these people are your weekly. I want you to reach out. I want you to touch them. So these are some things that I believe the Church of God can do, but we should never get in our minds that this digital age is going away. Everything we do should be intentional. We have to learn to marry the two. We have to marry the connectors with the gatherers, and I believe if we can do that effectively, I think the kingdom of God will grow exponentially, and the devil's intent will surely be put to.
Well, that is awesome. Bishop Ellis, Greater Grace is a church. There are a few of them, but they're not a whole lot, that has generations that have attended. I was recently with Dr. Brazier back in April, I believe it was, and he was telling me how he pastors a church that has had he can count 5 different generations of families that have been a part of that church. When I was looking at the information about Brother Willie Green, he's the third. I can count his grandfather's father and him. I mean, I know at least 3. I'm sure you've got at least 4. You've got 5. Okay, I know you're one of those churches that has like 5. You've got deacons. Well, even when we look at Pastor Slaughter, a deacon's son marrying another deacon's a daughter. I mean, you have that in your church. How do you maintain the relevancy in a multi-generational church moving forward?
Well, let me say this, and again, this is being pre-recorded, so hopefully by the time this airs, Willie Green will have his 3rd championship ring as a coach. Hopefully the Phoenix Suns will have won the NBA crown for the year 2021. And shout out to him. He's on his way, or now probably in New Orleans, Louisiana, as probably the first young African-American from Michigan, Detroit, growing up through Greater Grace Temple Christian Academy and Cooley High School in Detroit, and University of Detroit, Mercy College University, and now a head coach in the NBA of the New Orleans Pelicans. But let me say this: when you talk about multi-generational, that kind of is what it is. And I will share with you that I agree with Associate Pastor Porter. Things are different, and you're going to have options. We for a long time, and Greater Grace has always been a social media church as well as a television church. So when the pandemic hit, I didn't feel any need to try to press to have an indoor service, because we're all over television almost every single day, and on multiple platforms. So we're out there, and we get to keep that message out there. But there is something to the connectivity. As Pastor Porter said, Bishop Noel Jones and others were talking, there are people that like to gather. So we're doing the outdoor service because people need to gather. And I will tell you, I've been trying to figure out for the longest, how to have, because we have a 20-acre campus here. It's a wonderful campus. I mean, it has some of everything. And I've been trying to figure out how I could do, some Sunday services. I got the Bible class down packed during the summer outside with refreshments and all of that. How can I get the Sunday? I said, well, the senior people, they're going to get heat stroke. Some of the younger people going to get heat stroke. And I never thought about cars and FM receivers and all of that. So the digital made all that possible. And for the record, we're going to be outside every summer now, whether it's a pandemic or anything, because it's just wonderful being out during the summer. I got food trucks and all that. I told this church, I said, listen here, Jesus made y'all hear him, then we fed y'all. I'm going to let y'all eat while I'm preaching because we ain't be long, okay? Because listen, this pandemic has shown me that 25 minutes is long enough for a good sermon and way too long for a bad one. So at the end of the day, you know, those 50-minute and hour sermons, that's gone. You know, Greg was watching me on Fox. She was like, Bishop, I like those 25-minute sermons. I said, you like them? I'm the one that's preaching them. Are you kidding me? Listen, I'm not going back, period. Hey, we used to say we waiting on the Lord to show up. The Lord was there when we got there. Are you hearing what I'm saying? And a lot of times, he done left the convention. You back in the hotel and order room service. You know, talking about they still in there waiting on me. I done been, wasn't nothing going on, so I left. But anyhow, y'all know I love to have fun. Amen. But at the end of the day, when you talk about multi-generational, let's say this, and let's agree on this. You know, it's difficult to pastor a multi-generational church because you have different demographics with different needs, different likes, and different cultures and habits. Some people like hymns, and some people like the hip hop gospel, and some people like the R&B gospel, and they're all different kinds. So how do you keep the older saints engaged, because they want to hear blessed assurance and they want to hear at the cross, but then the younger people, you know, those songs don't have much relevant to them. And I hear somebody say, well, you got to teach them the relevance. Listen, at the end of the day, people like music, and that's why you have so many different radio stations, because this group listens to this one, and then the advertisers advertise on that station because they know that's their demographic, and other people listen to the sports channel, and the list goes on and on. In cable, you've got about 500 channels out there because people have different needs. I've come to the conclusion, the one thing that everybody, Pastor Samuels, needs is love. At the end of the day, listen, Jesus ministered to everybody, the old people that were crippled, the young people that were possessed. He ministered to all kinds of folks and all kinds of demographics. And what made him successful was that he loved people. And I'm telling you, we can have all the theatrics, we can have all of the concerts, we can have all, people will come, eat up your food and leave and never say thank you. People will come and take your back to school supplies and say, is this all I'm getting? You know, you will say, come here. No, I'm just, but at the end of the day, you know, if you love people as Jesus did, and I'm telling you, so listen, my seniors, you know, my wife and I, we take them to the show twice a year. You know, we take them to the movies, we buy out a theater, and we go and they get popcorn, they get a hot dog, and they get drinks, and that says to them that Bishop loves you. Yes, he's much younger than you, but he loves you. I've got, I think the last time we celebrated, I think we had maybe 13 90-plus-year-old people that were still coming to church that I honored on a Sunday. So they're not at home. They're still coming to church. And at the end of the day, they got to feel that while this music might be music that really, I wish they would sing something else, they got to know that guy or that woman up there loves them. And if they feel that love, then they are going to feel, Pastor Porter, not as a gatherer, but a connector. They are going to stay connected because they know that things change. They understand that they have grandkids. Some of them have great grandkids. So they know that the things that they used to do, that time has moved on. There is no more horse and buggy. There is no more scrub board for washing clothes. And guess what? We're thanking the Lord for that. There's no ice man walking up the street trying to put it in a refrigerator or freezer. That time is over. So they know that things will change. And they know there's going to come a time when that choir is going to be singing so fast and it's going to be so loud it's hurting my ears, but they're going to come because they know that the love is there. And I think that that's what we have to make sure that we keep in the church, because we try to beat people down. We try to make people hear what we're saying. And listen, at the end of the day, I just want them to know that I love them. And I think that that's why you have that multi-generational gathering here at Greater Grace Temple, a church that is 93 years old. And in 6 years, of Lord willing, we celebrating our 100 or centennial celebration. And again, at the end of the day, I can't sing 5 different songs, so that everybody has gotten something this Sunday. We're going to sing whatever we're going to sing, and we're going to try to do it and to the glory of God. But at the end of the day, you're going to leave there, maybe not hearing your song, maybe not understanding this praise dancing or this mind ministry, but you're going to know why you go to that church. The other church, they sing hymns all the time. They say, well, yeah, I want to hear some more hymns, but one thing I know, that man loves me. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. And I'm 63 now, and those 90-year-olds said, that boy up there, I'm getting so much mail from senior living facilities. I'm like, well, y'all quit mailing me. I'm good. But anyhow, those 90-year-olds, I'm a kid to them still. And they got to know that this kid loves them. So I think that love is something that really has to go forth during this time. And I'm going to implement some more of that, Pastor Porter, making that, you got to touch people, And, I made it a point to call my seniors, but I'm going to do it on a more regular basis, because I'm telling you, when they hear my voice, who's that? My pastor, give me that phone. Pastor, you call me. Yeah, I call you, Ma, just see how you doing. And y'all be quiet. I'm talking to my pastor, So people want to be loved at the end of the day. And that's what made Jesus so successful. People that other folks stayed away from and said, I ain't going in that house. I ain't going to have nothing to do with them people. He was in there eating with them. And he was putting his own reputation at stake because he had the love of God in him. And I think that that's what we have to do to maintain the relevance with the multi-generational. If you love the kids, they're going to love you whether they know who Melchizedek is or not. They're going to love you anyhow.
This is awesome. I hope you pastors are listening, and this is helping you, because so often there are those who are asking, what are we going to do? And I like what Bishop said. He says the concentration isn't how you get them back. It's how to make sure they never leave, how to keep them connected. And I pray that this session and the words of wisdom that we're receiving today are blessing you, and that they are helping you. Now, I want to go on down here to Birmingham and ask Pastor T. Ellis, tell us, what's the demographic of your church?
So for us, we are a young church. The oldest member of our church is about 55. And so, we haven't had to necessarily, think through how to cater to an older audience. But coming from a church that is over 50 years old at this point, I've seen the merging of the two worlds. And so I agree with Bishop Ellis, just talking about showing that love, and also Pastor Samuel's just talking about just still believing in the power of the word. I do believe that the word works. The question is, are we working it in a way that inspires the whole group? And I think a way to do that is just to, imply proper audience analysis and follow that up with strategic and holistic programming. Also, just from a different angle, I want to just say, the Bible talks about how the old will still bring forth fruit. And the Bible talks about the young, the glory of the young being strength, and the honor of the old man being the gray hairs. So there's a merging of these two worlds that are necessary in the health of the church. And I think it's just keeping in people's minds that there needs to be a respect and a utilization of differences. We may be different ages, but we all come here for the same thing. We just may be at different places in our lives. So for someone who's young in our church, we have people who are starting businesses, people who are starting families. And so what they're looking for out of church may not be the same thing as someone who has already had that for 20, 30, 40 years, they're a little more settled and they're not concerned with those things. They may be more concerned with reflections and impartations. But we need all of this in order to be an effective church. And I mean that globally. And so I think for us, it's just, helping people to understand that we are different fruit growing on the same tree. We have different gifts in the body, but we are all one body. And the word of God literally works for all of us. So even if we don't add in all these different programs or what have you, just making sure that we are implying what we see in the scripture. And a part of that is what Bishop Ellis says, showing that love, and I would say properly stewarding differences so that people will know, hey, you are valued. I think one of the most important things for any generation is to know that their voice and their lives have value. And so if we show that, we will take a more proactive approach, as Bishop Ellis talked about. We'll be proactive and not reactive. So we're not trying to pull you back. We're trying to make sure you stay here. And I think those things are important. Relevancy with multi-generational audiences is kind of subjective, because just like the scripture talks about with when the sower threw out the seeds, it fell on different grounds. Those grounds or the soil was representative of different types of people. So it's not always a matter of what the church is doing right or wrong. Sometimes it's just a matter of what those people are receiving and how they are receiving the word of the kingdom, as the Bible talks about that seed. And so again, I think it's just it is a matter of love. It's a matter of just putting the word in front of people because it does work, and also making sure that we are properly stewarding differences, be it age, gender, tenure of service. We're properly stewarding those things and using people in the right areas to keep the church going forward.
Thank you. We've got to mix this up. We've got to keep the generations, keep everybody a part of it. Now, Pastor Tim, I've ministered at Victory on a number of occasions, and I know that Victory is a church that, even though it's a young church in terms of the years, how many years old is it? It's not that old. 15 years old. Okay. But you have multi-generations there. That's a multi-generational church. The earlier service, the first service is basically when I see they get the young, the next service is first service is the older, next service is the younger, and then the third service, because it's at a whole different part of the city, is a mixture.
Right.
So how have you all been able to do this? How y'all doing this?
For us to keep the multicultural relevancy, as we had to pull some of the points that Bishop Ellis talked about, Pastor T. Ellis just talked about, and Pastor Samuels, as well as my brother Aaron Porter, Pastor Porter. All those components of being connectors, trying to make sure that we connect, that we understand what our demographic is, who we're ministering to. That's very important. I recall so many staff meetings where we're actually sitting there, really trying to figure out and looking at the data, who's tuning in, or who's sitting there, what age. What is the age range for our 7:30 service? What's the age range for our 10 a.m.? And really take a look at our worship flow, which is really, because of our demographics, that's how we merge to a simple church mindset, meaning, what Bishop Ellis said, nobody's sitting our sermon. People have spiritual ADD now. They got a short attention span. So, instead of having announcements and just the roller coaster of a worship experience, you're shouting for worship, then you come down for announcements, and then you have these awards and you have this and you got this ceremony, and it's just, by the time you get to the ending benediction, you are exhausted. So in this generation, the generation of the young people, they're not they have options. We are in a season where people have options, and my generation, we're at a unique place because I sit in a place where, Bishop Ellis, he saw me when I was in my mama's womb. He was there when my mom went into labor. So I remember that day of Monday night joy night. I remember that day of being in church every day of the week. But now I'm in a generation where I seen the shift of the tide. I understand the relevancy of that day and time, and there's parts of me that miss that, because as Aaron Porter said, I'm part of that connect. I enjoy being around people, but I also understand the value of those that don't want to come in the building now. I understand that shift. So now, to be relevant is to understand both. And I believe that we have a responsibility to be a bridge for both of those. Find a way to hold on to the integrity and the relevancy of the older generation, and to glean on their experience of what kept them, because that didn't change. What kept our mom, what kept our grandparents, it's what's going to keep us today. But this generation may not hear the way it's packaged. So how can I take the integrity and the ingredients of what kept Bishop David Ellis, what's keeping Bishop Charles Ellis, and give it to a Caitlin and a TJ that all they understand is K-pop? How do I package it in a way to where it's palatable to them, but I'm not changing the ingredients? So we have to find a way to be a bridge, and a way to. I know I'm going, but I feel like a way to do that is to open the doors of the church. And what I mean by that, I ain't talking about altar call. Open the doors of the church. Open our mentalities. Let's be open to the intentions of the traditions. What was the intention? Sometimes the young people didn't always understand why they did it, but it takes us to understand what was their intention for it. What was the intentions for that? It was to keep us close to God. When we can understand the ingredients, their intention was to keep me close to God. Let me work on that. Understand, open the doors to the church. And now let me understand, open the mentality. What is the disconnect with the young people? It goes back to what Bishop Ellis said. A lot of times the younger generation can't connect up because they don't feel the love. They don't feel heard. I can't hear what grandma said because she complained about my dress. She complained about the way I look. And so the disconnect is they don't feel heard. So it's becoming that bridge, and now taking the integrity and the goodness of the generation before us, and get this generation, this other side of me, to understand it, so that it continues, but it continues in 21.
This is good, and you are so right. Sometimes they're saying, I can't hear what grandma's saying because she's busy complaining about things that don't appear to be relevant to them, And I know there's a saying that Pastor John Hanna has. He says, so often we have been guilty of treating the church like a gated community, that only certain people can come in. And if you don't have anybody know about a gated community, you either need the code or the opener or something to let you in. And a lot of times, people that don't have the code, everybody doesn't have the code. You understand? Everybody don't have the code. Everybody doesn't have the code, and we treat it like a gated community, and they don't know how to come in. That's been the blessing about what's going on in the pandemic. They don't need the code. All they need to do is go to Facebook. They don't need the code. They just go to they don't need the code. They can just go to YouTube. They don't need the code. So then I'm like, what do we do now? How do we handle it now? I'm going to shift because I've had this conversation with Associate Pastor Aaron Porter, and I want him to get this going here again. Is the 21st century apostolic church handing mantles to your generation? or are they dropping the mantles? Come on, come on. And remember, Bishop is on here. He gonna straighten out whatever it is.
Right. And we honor the bishop. Bishop was part of our conversation last time. I believe in this hour there is more dropping of mantles than there is passing off the mantle. The analogy is with Elijah and Elisha. If you follow the story narrative of Elijah and Elisha, notice Elijah did not want Elisha to even be around. Elijah tried instinctively, you stay here, I'm going to this city. You stay put. It was Elijah that said, where you going, I'm going. And then just so happened, when God took Elijah up, Elisha happened to be present to pick up the mantle and carry it. My concern, I sort of like to dig into the text, and I'll ask myself this question with all the other preachers. I'm not really convinced that Elijah thought Elisha should have been the next. I'm not really convinced. We see what God ultimately did and greater works, but I believe this generation, it's kind of hard to say, but I'll say it. Bishop's on the line. He's going to correct me. But I believe we're in a place right now where mantles are being dropped. I used in our narrative last time, Pastor Riley, looking at Greater Grace Temple. I thought it was one of the smoothest transitions until I heard Bishop Ellis speak, which I'm sure he will. But looking at Greater Grace Temple, that to us was one of the smoothest transitions. And man, look at how God removed the Elijah and the Elisha was right in place. And man, the church has grown exponentially. That is a rare story. But I think one of the problems is this. I don't know if we, as this generation, has convinced the fathers that we're ready for the mantle. So the fact that mantles are not being passed, but rather men and women are dying and we're left to pick up, quote unquote, the scraps and run with it. Please don't take that in the wrong vein. It could be that our fathers may not be convinced that the sons and daughters are ready to pick up the mantle and sort of complete the vision that God put in them. Not being their clone. Bishop Gay tells us all the time, you are not my clone. You have an identity. But I want us to follow the voice and the heart of God. So to your question, I believe that there's more dropping of mantles versus passing of mantles, and the fault may lie with the sons and daughters.
Whoa. All right, Pastor Samuel. Was it passed to you or was it dropped?
No, I totally have a different take on the mantle. I appreciate what Pastor Aaron said, Associate Pastor Aaron, and that is everybody has their own identity. And so one of the things I like that Bishop Charles Ellis did, and I'm not saying that because he's present, is just the truth. And I've said this many times, he never tried to mimic his dad. He stood in that pulpit, and I was there, and he told us, he said, listen, my father had his time. God has put me in this place, and you all gonna get who I am. Y'all not gonna get Bishop David Ellis. He said, I'm his son, but I'm my own person. And so I think when you talk about the mantle, it's important for us to understand that the mantle under the Old Testament was necessary because that's how they received their power, by looking at other people, looking at the other men that they served. But certainly when Joshua took over from Moses, he understood that he had to look to God for his leadership. And that's how it followed. And that's what, Bishop Ellis did. He looked to God for his leadership. And so when it comes to me, I wasn't trying to have no mantle. I wasn't have trying nothing. I was trying to go to Florida. How about that? I had a ticket going to Florida, and I didn't want to pastor no church. That's not what I wanted to do. My thing was let Marsh pastor the church or somebody else. But God would have it that my father got sick that day that I was supposed to leave, and I had to stay because he had a serious procedure concerning his heart. And the Lord spoke to me that day and said, you ain't going nowhere. And the church voted me in. I didn't want it. I sat on the steps of the church, and just cried like a baby because I was like, listen, I'm the last person trying to pastor. I love God's people, but some of them get on my nerves. I'm not trying to pastor them too. Let's just be real. You know what I mean? So I think that when it comes to the mantle, I agree with Associate Pastor Aaron, that when we do that, we gotta, and Bishop Noel Jones said this, people gotta be taught right. You don't just give your child the keys to your car and say drive. You got to teach them how to drive. You don't just send your child out to get a job. You got to teach them how to act in school so that when they get out of school, they will be, ready for a job. They'll be ready to live on their own. So I think also we don't have a lot of great examples left anymore. I mean, if we start counting within our own organization, we've lost a lot of the forefathers that were great examples for the mantle so-called being passed. So now who do we look for? You got to look to God, and the leaders now should ask God, who is it that you want to carry this? Because to do it by nepotism or favoritism or politics or sociology and all this other stuff, psychology, no, that's not going to work. I don't need you to put your friend in or your wife or your husband in because of that. I need you to look at my soul. I need you to understand the type of congregation that you have and what is needed. And I do believe that God has people out here still doing that. And so who he wants to be in charge, they're going to be in charge. Do I think they've dropped the ball a lot? Yes, I do, unfortunately.
Okay.
Pastor Roddy, can I just say something?
Sure. Come on in, Pastor Tim.
I believe along those lines as well. I just want to speak to the other side to what Pastor Aaron was saying, because I believe that there is some responsibility to that. And I believe that there's something to that, to where maybe the fathers may feel that the next generation or the sons or daughter may not be ready for the assignment. But I believe to the flip of that there's also some fathers that can't see life outside of the pulpit. And one of the things that I love about my spiritual father, Bishop Ellis, I'm going to go glad he's on here, is that he has a life outside of the pulpit. And I love that. I love that because so many times you see from the generation of the fathers, and even beyond him, the generation before him, church was all they knew. And, it's hard to make that transition and let it go when I was needed, and you have that feeling of being needed. The congregation need me. They need to hear my voice. And now, what does that season look like when they ain't calling on me? When I'm not in demand? And so many from that generation may be afraid of what that next season looks like because I was on the go all that time. I was in demand all the time. So as a result, there's some that's holding on because they're afraid of the next season.
That's good. That's good. Now, Bishop Ellis, I know a lot about your process. And sometimes, even in my conversations with individuals who think that it was very, very easy, I make them aware of the fact, living in that home, I heard on numerous occasions out of your father's mouth that, in so many words, you were not going to be handed it. You would earn it. There were other young men who were coming up in ministry. Many of them are bishops today. And he was always reminding you that it could be yours, but you've got to work. You're going to have to work for it. So I would definitely say, if someone were to ask me about you, I would definitely say it was handed. The mantle was handed. It wasn't dropped. If the only piece that maybe the interpretation of a dropping because of a sudden death. Now that's me talking about your life. You talk about your own life now.
Well, most people think that, things were set in stone and there was some vote that had been taken prior to my dad dying that I would be the pastor. There was not, I think that my dad had given me enough opportunity to show my gifts and to show my talents. And I think the people started asking him, you need to let him preach more often. You need to. And my dad always said, because Pastor Porter, I thought, And no, my dad goes out of town. There were three people that preached: David Burchett, Gary Harper, and Rustin Jackson. Those were three fellas that preached all the time. I couldn't get in there no kind of way, no kind of how. And my dad wouldn't put me in the rotation. And I'm kind of feeling like, and my dad said to me one time, he said, I don't ever want to put you in a place to make things hard on you, rough on you, and make people resent you. My dad said, I want people to ask for you. And when I finally got to preach one time, and I did pretty well, it wasn't a home run, but I didn't strike out, and, people started telling my dad, you need to let Chucky preach more, he did a great job, blah, blah, blah. And my dad always wanted people to respect me for who I was and not to tolerate me because they didn't want to tell Bishop, we don't want to hear your son preach. And as things happened, Bishop Harper got a church, moved out. Rustin Jackson took a new job out, and Dave Burchett, got a church in there. And next thing I know, I'm sitting up in the seat, in front of the pulpit. I was back against the wall. And sometimes you just have to let things play out, and God will make room for you if you have the gifting. And I will tell you that, my dad died overnight, and there was nothing in there saying that I was going to be the pastor, nothing at all, and it just worked out that the board voted me in as temporary pastor, as interim pastor, and then the church, a few days later, they wanted it to be permanent. So there it went, and there was no fight, no anything. And it was truly of God. And I get called. I got called by Bishop Jakes to come and teach at his conference on the passing of the mantle, because he said, you probably are the poster picture, in terms of a church that had a smooth transition. And as my Uncle Willie said, it's like, man, we used to drive him out of town, and me and your dad, man, he would just put the seat back, and I would slide over into the driver's seat, and we never stopped. He said, and that's kind of what it looked like with Greater Grace Temple. It didn't have to stop and get rebuilt or, a mass exit or whatever. People looked like your dad just stepped out of the seat, you moved in the seat and kept the car going, and both of us drive very fast, I might say. So things just kept propelling and going. But I will say that, it was truly a God thing, and it was of the Lord's doing, and it's marvelous in my eyes. But I will say to you, I think there are a lot of dropping of the mantles, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. When you have pastors who've been sick for 10 years and have not put together any kind of succession plan, that's a dropping of the mantle. I don't think that people should be splitting and have all this divisiveness and pitting families against each other, because I got a cousin trying to be the pastor and an in-law trying to be the pastor, and families are breaking up. I think that if you see the handwriting on the wall, then you need to make preparations for some smooth transition, so that all the work that you've done doesn't come to naught or doesn't come to anything, or now you have to rebuild all over again. I think that's sad when that happens. And of course, I don't plan to leave up out of here or to move up out of here without there being some kind of succession that the people are ready to receive, that they're comfortable with, and that the Lord is pleased with. So I pray to God that I don't drop it, but that I pass it.
Woo. Bishop, come on, y'all. This is wonderful. Listen, we have come to the end of our time, but I do want to just especially those of you who are of the younger generation, I want you all to just have some final words, particularly, and Pastor T, I'm going to start with you, particularly to those millennials, okay, who have been hurt, suffering from, as they say, church hurt because of our past traditions. Can you just speak a word of encouragement to them right now?
Absolutely. And I just want to say that I appreciate all of what has been shared. I really appreciate your story, Bishop Ellis. As far as, church hurt goes on the basis of tradition, I would just, share something personal. My mother was 19 years old when she got pregnant with me, and she was not married. Once I was born, at that time, the pastor of the church told her not to pass me around the church. She didn't want other people to think that it was okay to have a baby out of wedlock. Okay. But here's the twist of the story. The baby that they didn't want passed around the church, that kept my mother away from church for 30 years, that hurt. The baby they didn't want passed around is now pastoring a church. Okay. So one of the things I want to say is that church hurt does exist, and we've got to stop acting like it doesn't. Okay, it does exist, and we've got to stop leaning on that crutch of, well, I was traumatized, and this is how I was treated, and I turned out okay, so you will too. And we've got to stop making abuse look like the will of God, because it's not. And we've got to revisit our traditions that are sending people away from the Christ that we are preaching about. One of the things we see in the scripture is that Jesus tells the Pharisees and some of the scribes, as they're asking why the disciples haven't washed their hands to eat bread, he said, you know what? You in vain, you worship me. You worship me with your mouth, but your heart is far from me. He told those people that you hold to the tradition of men, right? More than you do the power of God. This is what he shares with them. He says, you reject the commandment of God just to keep your own tradition. But what I'd like to say to the millennials who have been hurt in the church, yes, you may have been under some pastors or leaders who oppressed you, suppressed you. They didn't like you because they saw success on you that they might not have seen in themselves. But you don't allow anything to stop you from moving forward into the position and the places that God has called you to. God will literally shift you from one place to the other, but you've got to be in a place where you're spiritually sensitive enough to hear from God. And you don't move until God tells you to move. Have I experienced church hurt? Yes. There were some times in my life, mighty goodness, where I wanted to just walk away from a ministry. And there were some great things that also happened at this particular ministry. I wanted to walk away, but I couldn't do it until God said that it was time. So one of the other things you have to remember, even with church hurt on the basis of tradition or anything, is that you cannot be impulsive. You cannot be impulsive with your next moves, because you have to go with what God has said about your life. Sure, they're handing mantles, dropping mantles for whatever the reasons are, but you got to make sure that you're not chasing something that's not for you anyway, that you're not chasing after a ministry that's not for you anyway, because a lot of times you would think that you're chasing mantles and you're actually chasing a monster, because it's something that God has not called you to. Okay, so even with all the hurt and all that you experience, you've got to make wise decisions. The scripture says, be not unwise, but understanding what the will of the Lord is. So in order to heal, in order to move forward, we talk a lot about destiny, but in order to really move forward and not take that baggage with you into destiny, you've got to forgive people who might not have apologized yet. You've got to forgive them without the apology. You have to remember the human side of people is not necessarily reflective of the power of God. You've got to remember that you've got to put things in perspective. And we can't blame God for things people have done. Okay? And the last thing I would say is go to counseling. Go see a counselor and take those techniques in moving forward in your life. It's okay to have Jesus and a therapist. And the reality is, just because it was church doesn't mean that there's no trauma connected to it. We talk about trauma in places outside of church, but people need trauma support in churches, because churches are led by people. Churches are full of people. Okay, and people hurt us. That's a part of life. But what we don't do is blame God. We forgive those people and we seek out the right counseling so that we can actually be healed and do the things that God has called us to do effectively without baggage.
Wow. My God. Come on here. Pastor Tim, come on. Come on, give those words of encouragement.
Yeah, I was just second what Pastor T said, is first acknowledge that the church is not perfect. It's full of imperfect people. And one of the things, we have to remember, and not to discredit anything, but I haven't seen anybody sick walking past the hospital and say, I can't go in there because there's sick people in there. It's a hospital. So when you understand the church is a spiritual hospital, it's going to be full of imperfect people. And as Pastor T said, that means, but human imperfections cannot reflect the integrity of God. God still loves you. God still cares for you. He still got your back, no matter, and the problem is that it's a trick of the enemy that allows what hurt, what things has happened to have you totally abandoned and give up on God. That's not the will of God. Don't give up on God. Don't allow, it's the same analogy, if you will. You had a bad experience at a restaurant. You're gonna eat again tomorrow. You're not gonna say, "Well, I'm not eating no more. I'm done. I got hurt at Red Lobster. I'm never eating again." No, you're gonna eat again. You got to get past it. And going back to what some of the things Pastor T said, maybe there has to be some counseling, some sorting out to really walk through what happened. And one of the main things is to know that you are heard. And the church has to acknowledge those experiences. Yes, it does happen. So we acknowledge, because I think the problem is, and the reason why different ones leave, again, we said it earlier, they don't feel that they're heard, and a lot of times those things that happen, the church historically has tucked it away and doesn't want it to come to light because it does become a blemish to the church, but again, I think tucking it away and not discussing it, not bringing light to it, does more harm to the church than good. Because again, imperfection, if we realize and embrace that imperfection is a beautiful part of our story, it's the grace of God. Ain't nobody's perfect. Being saved doesn't give me an extra ability to walk right. It's discipline. It's walking out walking out this walk, by the grace of God. That's why the grace of God is there. So acknowledging that it doesn't make us perfect, allows that stigma, it erases that hard bar to reach. No pastor is perfect. Take your pastor off the pedestal. It's not fair for him or her. It's not fair to put them on a pedestal to live a life that they can't sustain. So understand we're human. And but by the grace of God, there go all of us.
That's great. Awesome. Pastor Samuels?
Yes, you know what? I want to say again, thank you for this time, this platform. And I hope that I can encourage someone to understand that I think that in order to deal with it, we've got to listen to people. We've got to, tie into that hurt and that pain and not dismiss it, because a lot of people come to us hurt. They come from the world hurt and bruised. And too many times, I think we as the church people, we cast a judgment based on our own personal convictions and based on our experiences with everybody else. But you can't always apply that to everybody that comes in front of you. And as Bishop Ellis said, you got to show them love. You got to show them that you care. And one of the greatest ways to show them that you love and care is to simply take time to listen and not judge them. Don't tell them that you shouldn't feel this way. No, tell them, I understand, or you have a right to feel like you feel. But then you can also show them that the other side of that hurt is that God heals that hurt. After you've listened to them. Yes, God may have allowed you to be hurt when you got here or after you got here or before you got here, but he's also the healer of that hurt. And we've got to take that time to be able to hear them. The Bible says, be slow to speak, but be quick to hear. And we got to be patient with people. We think that people are going to come in and live this life overnight and they're going to do everything that we tell them to do. No, it's time. It's a process. Salvation and sanctification in salvation is a process. Sometimes people don't come out of their weaknesses for years, months, and Sundays. I remember a young lady smoked for 15 years and she said, how can I be delivered? My church keep telling me I'm a sinner. And my dad said, go back and tell her it takes time. God may not deliver you from whatever your problem is overnight, but we got to let them know, they that wait on God, he will heal that hurt. He will renew that strength. And then finally, we've got to understand ourselves that a lot of times it is through the hurt that we gain our respective character, the character of strength, the character of respect, the character of knowing who we are. We get a better handle on our personality. We get a better handle on our future. We get a better handle on where we are going in life and what our lives mean. Because I believe that everybody comes into the doors, there is something special they can contribute to that house. And it's up to us as leaders and saints to give each and every one of the people the opportunity through the vehicle of love and listening. There is always hope in the hurt. Just hang on in there, because that hurt after a while is going to be healed. There's going to be a scab that you're going to pick off of it. And you're going to be like Marvin Sapp said, I'm wiser, I'm better, and I have arrived in victory.
Oh, yes. Associate Pastor Aaron Porter, our Bishop Ellis has given us so many wonderful words of wisdom, and we just thank and appreciate the Lord for him. So we're going to allow you, Associate Pastor Porter, to just have the final words as it relates to encouraging those of your generation who are experiencing church hurt because of traditions.
Amen. Once again, thank you to my big sister Sandra Riley for the opportunity to share, and to all the distinguished guests I'm honored to share on this platform. I would say one of the things that we have to be careful is that as we walk in faith, sometimes we want to make faith a pinnacle that dissolves everything around us. It sort of dissolves all realities. And faith sees the issue, but faith ignores it. It doesn't dissolve it. It doesn't discard it. Jesus was dealing with Jairus, and the Bible says he was on his way to his house, and word came back after he stopped to heal the woman. Stopped, and she touched him with his garment. Word came out of his house: stop messing with Jesus because your daughter is dead. Jesus didn't tell Jairus, no, she ain't. Jesus didn't say, don't believe them. Jesus said, no, just keep believing. In other words, believe past the trauma. We're not here to discard the trauma that you faced in the church. We're not here to discard the fact that you've been wounded, that you've been hurt. We have to be careful that our faith is not dysfunctional. We have to be able to see and acknowledge what we've gone through. We must be able to acknowledge it and still say, I choose to believe. No one is discounting any pain, any hurt that we say the church has caused, people in the church has caused, people connected to the church. No one's discounting that. But what we are saying is that we have to get past the trauma and still believe God, no matter how bad it is, no matter how rough it is. If you can, Jesus told Jairus, just keep on believing. I hear them, but I want you to focus on me, Jairus. Focus on me and continue to believe. Did he tell the man from Mark 9:23, if thou canst believe, all things are possible. There's endless possibilities in God to them that will believe. Don't have dysfunctional faith. Dysfunctional faith always run to people who can't handle the situation. They brought his son to the disciples. They were not prepared or equipped to deal with it. Dysfunctional faith. Eventually, Jesus said, bring him to me. If you want God to heal the hurt, stop running to people that cannot do it. You've got to bring the hurt to Jesus. Jesus is a healer. The old saints say, and the world don't believe it, but he heals. And he heals all the time. So God bless you, family, people of God. Let's stay on the wall. Let's stay encouraged. This is our exodus. God is getting ready to create a miracle out of these last 17, 18 months. I believe it's going to blow the mind of the church. Thank you once again.
Wow. Listen, those of you that are in the chat, come on, give some hand claps and say some positive things. Come on in that chat. That's right. That's right. You know, I love what Associate Pastor Porter just said. Bring your hurt to Jesus. Those of you that have been experiencing hurt and church hurt, don't just stay where you are with it. Bring it to Jesus. I'm just thankful for all of our wonderful panelists. And I know today that God has blessed you and that God has helped you. I'm asking if you would just take this moment to sow a seed into the word that God has released on today. Those of you that are watching, join me in sowing a seed of $20 or more. I say $20 or more because I'm asking if you'd sow at least a seed of $20. And then there are some of you that are able to do even more than that. The information is on the screen, but let me tell you, there are 5 convenient ways for you to give. You can give by phone. All you have to do is dial 877-472-9462, and a live person will be there to take your call and to process your gift over the phone. Again, 877-472-9462. And that's going to be a live person. For those of you that prefer to utilize your credit card in a live environment, there's a live person there to take your call and to process your gift of $20 or more. Or you can text to give. Text PAW, and whatever the amount you're giving, $20 or more, to 28950. Again, text PAW and the amount that you're going to give, that amount of $20 or more, to 28950. So for an example, if you're going to give a $50 gift, you would text PAW space 50 to 28950. All right. You open the link, fill in your information and credit card, and then you're done. And then you can give with the PAW giving app. Now, if you are already comfortable using things like Givelify, PayPal, or Cash App, all you've got to do, we got good news, we support all 3 of those platforms. Just search there, type in Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. You'll find us on Givelify, PayPal, and also Cash App. I'm asking you, join me in sowing a seed into what God has released. I know God has helped many of you today. I know God has blessed you and He's strengthened you through the words of these wonderful leaders that God has blessed us to have today. Sow into what God has done for you. Sow that seed of $20 or more. You'll see the information right there on the screen. We're so thankful. Thank you to our presiding bishop, Bishop Theodore Brooks, and to all of the very fine members of the executive board of bishops who've allowed us to come to you on today. There's going to be more information about the remaining programs that are coming forth today and tonight's service. But we want to say thank you from myself and to all of our wonderful panelists. Thank you. God bless you, and may heaven continue to smile upon you. We love you, and there's nothing you're able to do about it.
Thank you.
God bless you. Bye-bye.
question that I do. Thank the Lord above. Gotta give it up. 'Cause he didn't have to do it for me. Gotta give